All right, hey writers, love plots not only drive one of the best-selling genres in publishing, they're also the most common subplot across all genres, even when they're not about people falling in love. In this video, we're talking about the one plot type every writer needs to master. Let's take a look at how to write a love plot. Now, when you think about the love story plot type, your mind probably goes immediately to romance, but this plot type is about so much more than romance. Let's think back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As we always talk about when we're thinking about plot types, all stories are about values, about the things that humans want and need. So when we look at the universal human values that you find on this chart, you should be able to find the origin and even the ingredients of every story ever told. And that's true for love stories as well. So what's the value at the heart of love stories? Well, it's not safety and it's not self-actualization. The value at the heart of love stories is belonging, being part of something bigger than yourself, a tribe, a community, a family. And in all cultures across all time periods, the seed of that community, the beginning of the family, its foundation, whether good or sometimes bad, is a relationship between two people, a couple, a love story. That's why love stories are so popular, because they're not just about two people, they're about all of us, about belonging, about family and tribe and community. Now, that being said, you can have love stories that don't focus on romantic love. For example, The Shawshank Redemption, which has a great friendship story as the subplot between Red and Andy, that makes a perfect love plot. Or The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which is an adventure story, but it also has the love story subplot between father and son. Or A Man Called Ove, which is a really beautiful story of a curmudgeon who keeps delaying his own suicide because of the interventions of his friends and neighbors, which is a perfect love plot between a person and a community. Or Gran Torino, which is kind of similar, the film with Clint Eastwood about a cranky man and his neighbors. Or The Breakfast Club, about a group of kids who start detention mostly hating each other and then end up as friends. Or Up, the Disney film about an old man and a boy who go on an adventure. And even Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone has a love story subplot between Harry and his new friends Ron and Hermione. And again, I say all of these examples just to be clear that you can have love plots that aren't about romantic love. And in fact, we see these all the time. Another misconception that we always have about love plots is that they can be kind of cliche because they have to have a happy ending, but there are plenty of love story plots that have tragic story arcs. We've talked about the 6 main story arcs in other videos. Love story plots can have all 6 of them, stories with happy endings and stories with tragic endings. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet might be the most obvious example of love stories with tragic endings, or The Awakening about a young woman's failed marriage and eventual suicide. But again, it doesn't always have to be about romantic love. Take Of Mice and Men, Steinbeck's novel about the friendship between 2 farm laborers during the Depression. Or Dead Poets Society about a group of students and the inspiring, eventually tragic friendship with their teacher. These are great examples of tragic love stories that don't necessarily even involve romantic love. So you can see, right, that this is a very flexible, universal plot type, and we see it everywhere in storytelling, not only as the main plot in so many stories, but also as the most common subplot as well. With that in mind, all love stories have a protagonist, of course, the main character of the story, and a love interest. That might be another character, could be a friend, a family member, or as we've said, a whole group or community. Whoever they are, we're just going to call them the love interests going forward, okay? Now, the thing that you need to know about love stories is that there are 2 main types. The first and most common type is when the couple is not together at the beginning of the story. You might call this a courtship love story. In this type, the inciting incident is some kind of meet cute where the protagonist and the love interest connect in some emotionally charged way. It's really important to point out that this inciting incident doesn't have to be a positive interaction, okay? They don't have to pull a Romeo and Juliet and fall in love at first sight. What often happens is that they hate each other at first sight, like in Pride and Prejudice, or You've Got Mail, or The Proposal with Sandra Bullock, or even Twilight. There's so many examples. The main thing is that they meet, it's intense, or charged, or exciting in some way. Okay? So when you're writing your love story, make sure the meet cute is a really strong scene. There are two other really important scenes or moments in the courtship type of love story plot. First is the breakup. At some point in their relationship, the protagonist and love interest experience some kind of breakup, whether that looks like a formal breakup or a falling out or some kind of physical or emotional separation or even a major or minor betrayal. I don't want to say that this is a rule because plots are flexible. And that being said, in the history of storytelling over thousands of years, every great love plot that I can think of has this moment where the characters, and especially the audience, questions, are they going to make it? And that's because that's the central question of a love story. Are they going to make it? Is the relationship going to survive all the obstacles in its way, whether from the couple or from society or from culture or from other characters? That's the central tension and the question of the entire plot. So make sure you find that moment in your story. The final scene, the climactic scene in this type of love story, is the proof of love scene, where either the protagonist or the love interest or both go through a huge amount of trouble to prove their love to the other. This is the scene in every romantic comedy when the character's racing across town in a taxi to get to the airport to stop the love interest leaving, or when they do some kind of performance in front of the whole school, or for Shakespeare, when they drink poison because they can't bear to live in a world where their beloved is dead. You get what I'm saying? That's the proof of love. And it's not always successful, right? Sometimes it ends in failure. And that's how you know the story is a tragedy. But it's there. That's the climactic scene of a love story plot. So that's how the courtship type of love story plot works. And remember, that's for couples who are not together when the story starts. Now let's talk about the second type of love plot, and that's when the couple is together at the start of the story. You might call this a betrayal love story plot because there's always some kind of betrayal. In fact, that's the inciting incident of this love story subplot, a betrayal of some kind. Think about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the film about a couple who don't know that both of them are spies, or F. Scott Fitzgerald's Tender as the Night, or the play Betrayal by Harold Pinter, or The End of the Affair by Graham Greene. And to be honest, I don't have a lot of examples of these kinds of stories because I don't like them very much. They're always kind of sad, and there's betrayal, and that's not good. But one that might surprise you is Crazy Rich Asians, the novel and film where the couple are together at the start of the story, and the betrayal is the fact that Nick never told Rachel that his family is extremely rich and maybe a little crazy. So that's how the betrayal type works. Now, all plot types live on a value scale, and the value scale for love plots is love versus hate. But you could go even further and say love versus isolation, or even belonging versus isolation, because like we talked about, belonging is the value at the center of these stories. And that means that most of the scenes in a love story, for it to be considered love, need to live on that value scale. For example, Romeo and Juliet, are they getting closer or are they getting further apart? And death, of course, is the ultimate isolation, right? Same with Pride and Prejudice. Do they love each other or do they hate each other? Are they going to get together or are they not? That's the tension, the value scale that we're experiencing. And this is true for love stories about family and friendship and community as well. Are they growing in a sense of belonging or a sense of isolation, right? And just to be clear, this is an external plot. The belonging and love they feel is on the inside probably, but the source of that is on the outside with their relationship with another person or group. Now, there are some conventions that we should talk about in love stories. And again, these are conventions that we find in most love story. They're not really rules. Some conventions you'll see a lot though, and you should think about including them in your stories. So the first one is love triangles. Readers love love triangles. Think about Mr. Wickham in Pride and Prejudice, or in Twilight, are you Team Edward? Are you Team Jacob? Or in the film Titanic, that rich jerk, I forget his name. Who is that guy? He's such a jerk. Or in the Hunger Games, Peeta versus Gale, right? Or in Bridget Jones's Diary, Hugh Grant versus Colin Firth. Or even in Casablanca, Rick versus Victor Laszlo. We love triangles. They're so much fun. And if you're writing a love story, you should probably have some kind of love triangle. But another convention is rivals, because not all obstacles to the relationship have to be other love interests. It might be career, or social conventions, or a family feud, like Romeo and Juliet, or the fact that the couple are supposed to kill each other, like in Hunger Games. That's a pretty good obstacle, right? So these kinds of rivals are an important convention. A sidekick, best friend type of character is really common in love story plots. Someone who can gossip and kind of egg the couple on, or even act as a rival in the future. And then, as we talked about, some kind of temporary breakup or separation is also a convention that you almost always see and that you should use in your love story plot. All right, I hope that gives you a good overview about how love story plots work and how flexible they are and common. We see these plots in everything, right? In every genre and every time period, they're an important plot and something every writer should know how to write. So just a quick review, the archetypal inciting incident of love story plot is either a meet cute or some kind of betrayal. The source of the conflict is external, and the value scale is love versus hate, which can also look like belonging versus isolation. The climax archetype is proof of love. Conventions include love triangles, rivals, best friends, sidekicks, and some kind of breakup or separation. And then subtypes are courtship stories, testing or betrayal stories, and family, friendship, or community stories. Now, what about you? Does this sound like the story you're writing? If so, let us know in the comments below, and make sure as you're writing to hone in on that inciting incident, especially the meet cute, if that works for your story, and find some rivals, maybe even a love triangle. And as always, you should find other similar stories, some masterworks to study, and of course, get to work. Reminder, don't miss out on future videos in this 9 plot type series. Subscribe, click the like button, maybe even click that little bell to get notified when we publish new videos. And also in the description, we'll link to our 9 plot type cheat sheets to help you figure out what your plot type is and how to best write it. We also have a free plot type assessment there. Until next time, happy writing.